Hi, everyone. Welcome to the GoldFish Report. I'm your host, Louisa, and this is our weekly Country Roads with Winston Shrout. How are you, Winston?
I think I'm doing okay. I think you're having another giggle fit.
Well, it's okay. Today's Friday, June 15th, 2018. No, no, no. We're just having a good laugh. It's Friday, and it's what happens with Winston. And today, we're going to talk about Winston's going to talk about alien intervention in government and world events. And so it should be very interesting. And so will the name of this report. Go ahead, Winston. What have you got for us? Oh,
Well,
hold on. I'm sorry. Sorry. Actually, I just wanted to make a comment before we get going
okay.
because the IG report came out yesterday and it is explosive, like the volcano in Kilauea. Okay, and it's a sign that volcano erupting and the other ones that are erupting are a sign that things are going to get explosive. Okay, so in this IG report, although it's redacted, we need to be demanding that the unredacted version be released to the public, and that the president can do that. He has the authority to declassify, and he should declassify the unredacted portions, which include evidence and investigative information. I also want to just screen share really quick before we get started. Sorry, Winston. This will help me break that laughter. This is our 24/7. This is the GoldFish Report news page on Facebook. It's a 24/7 news page. And here the top story is about demanding the full unredacted IG report. It also talks about some of the things that were in the IG report, such as crimes against children. This has to do with the Hillary Clinton and the Hillary Clinton Foundation. This has to do with the analysis of the laptop and thousands of emails, as you can see. This is sexually explicit. This is really explosive, and this is the beginning of the end for them, because they are liars, cheaters, and they are thieves, and they have been doing this to our children, to us and our children. And some of this is going to be related to what Winston's going to talk about today. Let me move this out of the way so I can go back to a couple other points that were made. It does indicate, and they're all posted, of course, we also had a missile attack that was aimed at the president in Air Force One, which has not been officially confirmed by our government, because it was our government trying to do it. It was the deep state part of the government who, I believe, was trying to take out President Trump. So that's the reason why you're not going to hear about it in the mainstream media. There was also thousands of arrests made of pedophiles, and you did not hear about that on the mainstream media because they are failing. They have failed us completely, and they need to be replaced. Okay, so what you have here is the IG report. There's all kinds of excerpts from the IG report posted on here, and here you have, them calling Trump supporters uneducated, lazy, poor middle-class people who are stupidly wrapped up. It's really kind of extremely disparaging, insulting. You have some other crazy stuff going on about sex robots. But here you have some, other excerpts from this. But of course, 2,300 pedophiles, as I said, were arrested yesterday, and not a single coverage from CNN, New York Times, New York Post, Washington Post, or MSNBC, probably because they are involved, or they would be in some way. They're involved in it, with it, or in the cover-up of it. And that's it's not circumstantial, folks. It's the fact. So this IG report is going to come out and explain all of this and highlight it. But I'm not going to go through all of it, but what you do have here, it was on Fox News last night, crimes against children. Well, what kind of crimes against children? That's why we need the unredacted report, right, Winston?
Yeah, let's just call it what it is. It's rape.
It's rape, it's incest, it's child, abduction, trafficking. It is the worst nightmare you can think of is exactly what they were doing. And this is very sad. I know they're trying to do a lawsuit against the president and his foundation when he publishes this fact that 100% of his charity funds went to charities, 0% to expenses, versus the Clinton Foundation was 93% expenses, and only 6% went to charities. So, we're really only we're talking about, a real charity versus a slush fund, which says right here. So I'm not going to go into much detail about it. There's lots of things on this page that you're going to find. You're going to want to, look at. Here we have UFO near residence of Indian Prime Minister Modi sparks mass trolling on Twitter. But he's just looking at it as like an invitation. He's like looking at them as he's welcoming them. He's not fearful in his response. And if you read that article, you'll read about that. And Winston's going to be talking about that today too. But some of the most important things that came out of this IG report are related to the collusion with the FBI. They said it was not political with Comey, but I don't know how they could say that. It was entirely political. There was, and there are going to be arrests. Trey Gowdy, right here, you have a statement by the chairman of the Oversight Government Reform. This is Trey Gowdy, and he's a whole bunch of statements. Alarmed, angered, and deeply disappointed by the Inspector General's finding of numerous failures by DOJ and FBI in investigating potential Espionage Act violations by former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. And it goes on and on. This is going to be published on the GoldFish Report news page, and you can look at it there. So the link is there, and of course the entire IG report is published on the GoldFish Report news page as well, so you can look for that link. So I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention, this is really explosive. I mean, they're talking about taking out Trump, the two FBI agents, I guess it could have been Page and Strozek, I'm not quite sure because it was identified as FBI employee, saying specifically, we're going to make sure that Trump is not president. And that was their goal. It was an absolute political ambush is what it was. But they failed. They failed because, at some point when you're working on the wrong side for humanity, you're going to hit a wall, and that's what's happening right now, I think, Winston. So I'm going to hand it over to you. I just wanted to get that out and off QAnon has been posting a tremendous amount, and I've corroborated. I've done the many proofs between the president's tweets, between other news, and between the events with the Q posts. So you can look for them on that 24/7 news page. Okay, I'm not going to do a special report on it because a lot of people are doing reports on it on YouTube, and you can find them there. So just having said that, I wanted to kind of address that off the top because it was really big news yesterday, and it will be even bigger today once you get through the over 500 pages of this report that is redacted, and what will come out is the evidence eventually. But
let me ask you a question because I haven't seen any news follow up on it. You remember, I don't know, a year and a half ago, Trey Gowdy actually sent a couple of investigators down into Arkansas to check out some of that stuff. Both of them were murdered. Is anything more come of that?
No.
I haven't heard more about it.
No, I didn't hear anything about it, but that didn't stop the investigation.
Yeah, what I'm saying is we got
right. Exactly.
We got people who just look into things, who get murdered for it.
Exactly. You pointed that out in our last interview where you had someone who was just looking into how this docket, his docket in the court system was being used, and it was being monetized and hijacked to basically to steal money by the court system from the Treasury Department, and the Treasury was involved in it, so they were guilty of it as well. And then he was murdered.
Yeah.
Of course, that was in the UK, but
same thing that happens here, it happens everywhere.
Exactly. Okay, Winston. So having said that, Prime Minister Modi made this really big announcement about a UFO that was seen near his residence, and he had a very enlightened approach about it. So why don't you enlighten us about this?
Well, I don't know. I think it seems like there's been more interaction lately. For instance, if you listen to some of James Gilliland's information, he talked about his friends in Australia, this Peter and this other lady who I can't say her name. Anyway, they actually have Pleiadians materializing right in their front room.
Whoa, that's great.
I mean, ships were, wasn't unusual, to sit in the middle of the daytime and have ships, passing over and stuff. But they've actually had Pleiadians.
Whoa.
in their front room. And that's nothing unusual. Like I say, I had a friend, I don't know, maybe 8 years ago.
Wow.
He had 3 Pleiadians come right into his front room physically.
Hmm.
And so, but anyway, we expect to see more of this, the kind of thing going on. And so, yeah, it's not big news, when
Right.
Pleiadians pop up.
Yeah, I only have helicopters flying over my house.
Yeah. Well, just you, you can do one. When I was working up in the Tonopah test range, we were building housing and stuff because that's where I don't know, that stealth fighter. Anyway, we were building barracks up there, and as it turned out, they had uh, flat roofs on the barracks for the Air Force personnel, and they had some kind of white thing. So it's kind of funny, that when the Russian satellites would pass over, they'd hide everything, or put out what they wanted them to see. Anyway, we knew they were coming over, so some of the guys went out and took on that white roof, took some paint and painted a big middle finger.
I've thought of putting messages on my house because they fly over all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't yet. But that's a good idea. That's a good one.
Well, I don't know. We're getting kind of gross here. So, but anyway, today I wanted to, speak of, well, the thing that really got us started laughing this morning, we were talking about people who were having a hard time with the red pill, swallowing the red pill. So I had suggested to Louise that maybe we need to develop a red pill suppository.
And I said, that's it. That's the name of our report today. Then we started cracking up. As I was pressing record, we were like cracking up over it because it's true. I mean, he says when the red pill won't work on someone, that's when you need a suppository. And I'm like, oh man. And he's absolutely right. You're absolutely right, Winston. It's really hard.
Well, we're getting into him somehow.
Get it into him somehow.
Well, it is
one way or the
serious.
other.
It is serious, because we do have quite a few people that are either have not been exposed to some of this information or who are purposefully avoiding it. It's like anything else, if it's not a part of your world, you don't see it.
Yeah.
The prime example was when the European ships came over to North America, and the ships were right there, close to the beach, and they could see people on the shore. And the native people, they could not see the ships, could not physically see them because their brain was filtering out something that was not a part of their world. And they would get in their boats and come on shore and physically shake hands or do something with the people, and then they started to see them. But it's the same thing with people generally, is your brain will filter out information that is so far removed from what you're involved in that people simply can't see it. And we have these kind of things happen all the time. I mean, there might be, several people in a group, one person might see a UFO or an ET or something like that. Nobody else sees it because their brain has filtered it out.
Amazing.
So at some point, I guess, maybe we'll all have a little bit of a wake-up call. I don't think that's a matter of mind control so much as simply the brain is filtering out, like the natives, with those European ships. They could not see them. Physically couldn't see them because their brain filtered it out. That's why we say, a lot of times you have to go into your heart. And because when people ask me, Winston, I'll come up with some, strange thing I'll say, and people ask me, how do you know that? And I point to my heart because I know it in my heart, not in my brain. My brain's going to tell me that's completely ridiculous, but my heart tells me otherwise. And so I would think that if people want to know truth, then they would do that. Because, people use the word believe. Do you believe in UFO? Do you believe in ET? And I keep saying, no, I don't. I don't believe in any of that kind of stuff. I know it and point to my heart.
Right.
And I think that's really the final analysis of all these things. If you want to know something, get out of your brain and go into your heart. And that's where truth lies. It does not lie in your brain.
That's true.
It just doesn't.
I hear you.
Anyway, today I wanted to spend a little bit of time opening up something.
You wanted to give y'all a big suppository. So here it comes, folks. I'm sorry, we're just being silly today.
Well, the problem is get your laugh button pushed and you can't push it off.
Well, it's your fault. You shouldn't have said it. That's funny as heck. Okay. All right, let's go.
Put on your serious.
Got it.
Oh, God.
As good as it's going to get. Let's go.
All right. Well, what I wanted to do today was to go back over some of the information for Preston James. I introduced something that people may never heard of, the story of Ann Wilder, but because I wanted to show the influence of the alien or extraterrestrial, non-Terrans, as some people call them, entities that have had a great deal of influence on our governments and on our international affairs. And if you think that's not the case, you got a real wake up coming.
Oh yeah,
you got a real wake up coming.
Big suppository coming.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Knock it off. What is it about butt jokes that get people going crazy?
Just go ahead. Sorry, folks. I hope you're enjoying our laughter. Hope it rubs off on you too, because it's Friday.
Oh God! Man, don't say that.
We just need a. We just need a.
All right, we'll get serious now, maybe. But anyway, this influence has been, from both sides of the equation, from the dark side and from the light side. And I think we've gone over a little bit of this, times past. I wanted to maybe open up some new avenues for people that they can listen to. Now, not particularly in that respect, but there's one particular thing that I want to show. Do you see her?
Okay, yeah.
You've heard of Peggy, haven't you?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a very interesting lady, the experiences, the stuff she has. She told about her stories about how she got involved in all these kind of things, one thing and another. But one of the things that was very interesting was that apparently where she lives at, there must be some kind of area where if I can use the word, where the veil is very thin.
Oh, okay.
And she was constantly being talked to by some of the people who were existing in lower fourth dimension. And they were reporting on what things were like where they lived at, but they were reporting a huge reptilian influence in that lower fourth dimension. Now, of interest, what she did was she found out that she could record these voices from these people in the lower fourth. And so in her house, apparently she had set up 3 or 4 voice activated tape recorders. Mm-hmm. But then, after she recorded them, then what she did, she went and did reverse speech on the people from the lower fourth dimension, hopefully so she could get the truth of what they were saying. And so it's a very interesting report. I think people can go on the internet and listen to the information she has to give, because it's very, very interesting. But the thing that keyed me up for today was specifically her report of what the reptilians were doing in this lower fourth dimension world. because there's a bleed over. Because when we start to talk about the influence of this reptilian thing in our third dimension, we find that many of these individuals who are heavily influenced by the reptilians, you keep getting this bleed over. And so when we start talking about shape shifting, what you're seeing, if you see it, what you're seeing is a bleed over from the lower fourth, because most of these reptilians, operate in the frequency of the lower fourth dimension. And so from time to time, when people would shapeshift and stuff like that, that's what they were seeing. They were seeing that bleed over from the lower fourth. Mm-hmm. For instance, I think I had reported that this one lady had told me that she had physically seen Queen Elizabeth shapeshift into a reptilian. That was a bleed over from the lower fourth. And then a lot of people have reported kind of a shadow or a ghost that they would see around people that appeared to be reptilian influence. And there's all kinds of reports on the internet, of various characters, where they focus in on their eyes.
Right.
And their eyes change, the pupil and the iris and so forth of these individuals changes. They physically see it change. Then I saw one time, this one individual, was being interviewed, and she was actually physically changing right there on camera. So, it appears, again, if it's not a part of your world, and it may not be, but at the very least, I think people should be aware that there is some kind of an influence. Now, people of all religions always talk about these evil spirits or jinns or whatever people call them. I think every religion, reports, evil spirits, fallen angels, all kinds of different things that they talk about. And so at this point in this report, we're going to refer to these entities that are being, honestly reported about as basically being reptilians, which are under the control of what's known as the Dracos. And I think that's what Preston James had most of his reference to. So maybe we should go right to that.
Okay.
Like I say, when we brought the article up the other day, we didn't.
Well, one of the things that I saw was interesting also on YouTube was some folks who were able to slow down their video and show like one screen at a time, and it would show the hologram that they use to camouflage their appearance breaking down.
Yeah.
So not only would they see, so they would see these pupils, the pupils of the eye going slanted. They would see also the breakdown, which only appeared on the body, on the face, not on the image behind it. So it's not like the whole image was being, but there is a hologram. I mean, the holograms, I knew the person who did the Michael Jackson hologram, and it's almost solid bodied. I mean, you don't even know the difference. They are kind of solid, because that's all that we are. It's a frequency that creates solid form. So why can't you make a hologram a solid form too? It's a frequency.
Yeah, actually you can. Like I say, it's just like, tuning in your radio. I mean, if you're listening to country music, you flip over a few frequencies, and what do you come up with? Classical music. Flip a couple more frequencies over, and you come up with, I don't know, jazz. That's the same thing we're talking about here when we start talking about changing frequencies. If you can change your frequency, you can get into a different modem. Now, that's what we had, some time ago, had encouraged people to use that Saint Germain affirmation to actually change your frequencies. And having done that, even though you sit and look at me right now on the screen or whatever,
right.
My frequency apparently did change because I had reported that when I would go through the airport scanners, it would set the scanners off
Mm-hmm.
because there was something different going through that scanner than what typically went through it. Then I would look at the computer screen that they were looking at, and I would see, gold blotches all up and down my body. And that's what was setting off. And Scott Werner had talked about same thing happened to him. And he said instead of gold, his colors on the screen were purple. Anyway, so obviously me and Scott are operating on a different frequency when we go through the airport. I'm just reporting that.
Well, if you want to learn more about frequencies, folks, there's this document here that's published on the GoldFish report documents page, or the links, VIP docs. There's 2 pages with documents. And this was a document that was on stopthecrime.net, and it was all about how they use frequencies and how they identify our prime frequency, which is really their signature, the resonance signature of our soul. So that is, from what I understand, are unique, as unique as a thumbprint. So this is how they can target individuals, and that they do. And that's what this document was about. This document was about how they do target certain individuals and how they do it using frequency. So this was a good point that Winston made about frequency. And there's a whole science of that that's being, our sciences and our education is meant to steer us away from that, just like it's meant to steer us away from really the nature of our whole world around us. So we have a lot that's going to change in the future, and hopefully the near future, regarding science, so we can understand all of this a little bit better.
Yeah, I think we do. Well, I think we do understand it. I mean, some of us anyway.
Right.
Anyway, let's get into, again, we talked about this report on a previous time. And then, we were looking at this particular caveat here. It says this has been a difficult article to write unless folks are up to speed on the information contained in earlier articles on secret space war. They would likely find it incomprehensible, incredulous, and a complete waste of time. It's no use arguing against the shadow. Unless you have a working knowledge of the secret space issues, please stop reading this article and don't waste your valuable time. Or in the alternative, get the red pill suppository.
Get that red pill suppository ready.
Okay. So anyway, in this article, and this image right here, this is the image of a very high level Draco. This is what they look like. Okay, they got the wings, they got you can't see it in this picture right here, but typically the worker class reptilians or they have a caste system. And the low level workers or soldiers or whatever either have no tail or a very short or small tail, but as an example, what was that movie called? Jupiter Rising or something like that?
Jupiter Ascending, yeah.
Jupiter Ascending.
Yeah, there was disclosure in that, yes.
That was a high level reptilian. They were trying to depict her because, number one, you saw the wings and you also saw the long tail.
Right.
So if you had, 10 reptilians lined up, if you want to pick out which one was the head guy, just go see who has the longest tail. I don't think I want to get around them in it anyway, but I'm just saying, that's one of the things. But anyway, this here photo, or that's not a photo, it's a artist rendition. And so I think probably it's pretty accurate, even though you can't see the tail.
I think there was reports that aside from that one person that you knew, there was another person who is that? Arizona Wilder, who said she was present. Yeah, she said she was present when she saw the Queen shift into this Draco, and it was horrific at what she was describing. So yeah, we're going to look into that just a minute. Okay.
I want to go back through again some of these things with Preston. Preston is a reporter on this. and Wilder was a participant. And so the point of view is going to be a little bit different.
Okay.
And so in the case of Preston, he's given an analytic report. Mm-hmm. In the case of Ann Wilder, she's going to give a firsthand account. So it's a little bit different perspective.
Okay.
Because sure. Preston is not a victim, and right. Wilder is.
Right.
Preston's not under mind control, and Wilder was.
Right.
So the information is going to be looked at just a little bit differently in the two different reports. Anyway, Preston is talking about the influence of the Khazarian influence, because again, the Khazarians, which are heavily under reptilian control, have worked their way into everything, to banking, to Hollywood, to government, to whatever. Now, does that mean that every single Khazarian on the planet's that way? And I'd say no. But the ones who have worked their way into these various elements so that they can control are under the influence and control of these reptilian influences from the lower fourth dimension, like Peggy was talking about. I mean, go and listen to her interviews and stuff. It is quite shocking. No, I shouldn't say shocking, but to me it was informative. Other people might find it shocking. Anyway, Preston goes in talking about their goal is to convince people that the black is white and white's black, good is evil and evil is good. They start talking about the monetary production, distribution systems, money magic, and applied black magic arts. See, that's who attacked me back in the first part of March, with these black magicians.
Yeah.
Okay. Draco is reputed to induce massive human suffering and fast kill and slow death in many different varieties. Now, again, we had talked about the energetics involved in suffering. And so, for instance, if a Draco-influenced individual gets into government and can induce a war, where people are suffering, people are dying, and all these kind of stuff, this energy that comes from that is harvested. First off, let me explain, the energy itself is neutral.
Right.
Energy is neutral. But if through violence, rape, or whatever, that energy caused by fear, if that energy is expelled in that situation, then it's harvested into what they call loosh, and it's one of the main food sources for some of these fourth dimensional reptilians and so forth. So that's why they push these agendas, human suffering and all these kinds of things. So and the Dracos have been going through the solar system doing this, for a long time, all through our Milky Way galaxy. And many of the efforts of the space programs and so forth to accomplish this have simply been to put a stop to it. We need to put a stop to it. Draco's chief creation and current claim to fame is world Zionism, the plague of mankind, and known to top insiders as the synagogue of Satan. The Dracos have allegedly hijacked most of planet Earth through their central banking, debt-based, pernicious usury system, Babylonian money magic, and use this network to further their anti-human alien agenda. Yeah, they have. That's why we're having this global reset of our whole financial system, and we're going to reduce the suffering due to this program by simply flooding the planet with money. That's what we're doing, and that's the only way to overcome this other problem. I think we've gone over that quite a bit in the past, so we don't need to
Right.
get that up. Then he's talking about some of the false concepts, versus Semitism, anti-Semitics, and all that kind of. I think I think about 2 or 3 reports ago, I gave a history of Noah,
Mm-hmm.
and he had the 3 sons,
Right.
Japheth, Shem, and Ham, and the Khazarians were descended from Japheth and not Shem. So these Khazarians who call themselves Jews are not Shemites; they are Japhethites, and the bloodlines prove it. I mean, I was looking at one report, and they were doing some analysis of the bloodline of the Palestinians, 80% of whom showed a true Hebrew bloodline, whereas Khazarians don't show that. So anyway, it's a bloodline thing. So this is a good article. You can go through it. I don't want to spend a great deal more time on it, except to encourage people to go through this article. And like I say, this is a red pill article. I think there were some other things.
Well, for some, this is the red suppository, because for anybody who really has issues with the idea of even these other entities besides humans that exist, they have a long way to go. That's why they need the suppository. They're going to have to bend further in order to get that up, because because
Well,
it's
if you don't orally take the red pill, you will be getting the red pill suppository.
yeah, just how it works.
That's just how it works. So you can take it either way you want it. The simplest way is orally. The other way, just a little bit embarrassing. But it will happen.
At least you don't have to choke it down.
Then he goes into where did these Dracos and so forth come from, and
Right.
actually they're all over the universe.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in some of my past experiences, I was a Pleiadian battle commander, and we were fighting. Yeah, I do have some of those memories. So we've been fighting with this problem, for a long time.
They cause really problems wherever they go, because they don't have the capacity for compassion and empathy.
No, they're what we call, they physically don't.
Right.
They are biological psychopaths.
Mm.
There's nothing to be done with them.
That's great.
Yeah,
And
that
they're
says
running
here.
our world. They're running our world, like you said, Winston. They're
Yeah.
in banking. They're in government. They've taken over. They are in all the positions of power, and we've really pretty much been screwed for a long time. And now, President Trump's been given, I think, a really, really, I guess I would say, divine, mission to end this, because it is time for it to end, right, Winston?
Well, let's not put everything off onto him now.
No.
Everybody has to take this responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
But
Well,
it's kind of funny. Did you see the Robert De Niro presentation?
oh my God, that's really shameful. It's shameful, and you know what, folks? I mean, you should boycott Hollywood because of it, because you have to. Hollywood's infested with pedophilia and Satanism. They're all Satanists out there. Not every one of them, but I mean,
Not all of them.
not all of them, but a lot of them are. And we saw that, Jeffrey Weinstein has been taken down. He was indicted,
Yeah.
and he's singing, he's talking, apparently. But, I hate to see these guys get deals. I really, really do, because they knew right from wrong, and they made their choices.
Yeah. Anyway, it says some have even theorized that they have been able to infect the genes of somewhat of many humans, and they have.
Right, through
Or that they
vaccination.
have been able to induce violence through their ultra high-tech deployments of mass mind control and psychotronics.
Well, that's what's in this document right here. So go look for
Exactly.
this. Yes, this is the document. This was a classified document. This was never supposed to be in the public's hands. Never. So
Yeah.
it's on stopthecrime.net. It's called the Aquarius Group Briefing. You'll find
Yeah,
it.
in that article, that article is so old. I don't think they report on the voice of God technology.
Yeah, I think they might at the end, because this, I think, was a summary. I'm not sure how old it was, but it might not. But it does say that radio waves in the 800 megahertz band is where the vital human brain frequency resonates.
Uh-huh.
So
Well, the
they've
voice
got it
of
all figured.
God technology, they can actually beam. It's called, it hits your skull and you actually hear voices inside your head.
Voices.
They might tell you to go kill yourself or whatever.
Yeah.
They have the technology. And
And they're
I think
using
it's called voice of God. Huh?
Right, and they're using this to target certain weak-minded individuals. So
Yeah.
they'll go and do these shooting rampages just to
Yeah.
push the gun. They know this time's coming. They knew this IG report. They know what Trump's purpose is. That's why they hate him. They're losing control of the planet, and they figure, well, if we're going down, we're going to take as many people with us, and that's why they won't stop. So you have them.
Psychopaths don't stop.
Right. So that's why they have this technology to trigger people to try to, push certain political agendas. And it's right before our eyes, folks. We have to wake up to this now. Come on, wakey, wakey, or you're getting that suppository.
Yeah. A psychopath will only respond to pain. That's all. They have no compassion. They have no feelings. They will only
Right.
respond to pain.
Mm.
And so, sometimes we talk about, you know, uh, cruel and unusual punishment. That's all a psychopath will respond to. Anyway, talk about psychotronics through satellite-based transmitters, as perhaps via certain pulsed digital wave patterns transmitted in parallel by cell phone towers.
Like, are you talking about, like, in other words, if a Draco or any reptilian overhears people talking about barbecued reptiles and how good the barbecue sauce tastes on them when they're cooked a certain way, and that
Yeah.
kind of thing, would they'd respond to that because that's their own survival, right?
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, with the electronics that have been set up on the planet, that's an easy, how shall I say, uh, way for these lower fourth dimensional entities to tap into and send messages. So I mean, we use cell phones, to a good effect, but the electronics and stuff involved with it could also be utilized for dark purposes. Oh, then talks about if they make the contract, and talk about people who do contract with these entities. Says they make the contract, then they are assigned their own Draco spirit guide, which appears to them in a variety of forms, but once doing so, stays in that form which they first appeared in. These so-called personal spirit guides are alleged to provide advanced warning of forthcoming problems and apparently can serve as intel advisors and psi-power servants as long as their contractee continues to do as much covert evil as possible and engage in periodic human sacrifice and sexual magic according to the satanic holidays.
Right. So the sexual magic is stuff that you also see, like
Yeah.
when you're watching the awards programs where you have Madonna and you have Katy Perry doing these, type of occult, uh, I guess, rituals on stage. And so
Yeah.
and some of the music was created for this, to put you in this trance. To some of this
Yeah.
rock and roll music was created very
Not
low
rock and
vibrating.
roll.
Not rock and
Rock.
roll, rock or some kind, some of the pop music, I would say, has been
Yeah.
like their music, would be trying to entice them and tempt them. I mean, Katy Perry's songs, her lyrics refer to this,
Yeah.
legendary lover, the beginning of the lyrics are like, I see your aura, I want your aura, legendary lover, and then it's kind of spooky, really. And we realize your kids are watching this, they're listening to this, and they're singing it, and they're like evoking it. They're like, evoke these entities to them when they're singing this. They have to stop singing it.
Yeah. And then talking about recruits, It goes into the Bohemian Grove get-together, men's only party. And let me say this also in regards to what we call the UFO ET discovery community. Mm-hmm. It has been heavily invaded. Heavily. I was talking to James about some of this stuff, and he was talking about one of the most popular personalities in the UFO type circuit, bragging about having danced at the Bohemian Grove. This guy can't keep his mouth shut.
Wow.
And not only dancing, but other
ritual
things.
Right.
So again, the invasion, you have to be very careful. I mean, everybody thinks, for instance, we have this organization, we have that organization, that are trying to, put out information about this, that, and the other. But a lot of these organizations have been heavily invaded. See, this is one of the things first time I met this fella, he's dead now, but 20 some odd years ago. And he was telling me that he had talked to someone who had been heavily involved in the Illuminati. And this fellow had told him that any organization that has influence over people, the Illuminati will invade every time. So just because an organization is putting out information, they will be invaded. They will be invaded, and for some of us, who know that, we don't get involved in organizations. I mean, as far as solutions in commerce, I've tried to keep that as totally independent as possible. And same thing with yours, like you had mentioned. Here we are, just single solitary people out here making these reports and so forth, but we don't organize either. Gilliland don't organize.
Nope.
Not involved in any kind of organization because it will be invaded.
Right.
And some of these UFO type things, where they create organizations, they are invaded.
Right.
And we even got one guy that's, bragging about being working for Google. Nope. Anyway, that's typically what happens. Mm-hmm. I don't want to spend a great deal of time, but we'll repost this article so everybody can read it and so forth. Hijacking of whole peoples, government, nations, and international bodies of government is the Draco's game, a key mechanism of placing a spell on mankind. Yep, exactly. Okay, let's see. And then he goes into the tall white Nordics versus the Dracos, and that's a little bit questionable. It's kind of a toss-up with me when you start to talk about some of these Nordics. If you read Sean David Morton's books, Sands of Times, I mean, they have this kind of interaction with this tall white Nordic named Lord Tugi, and it was not a pleasant experience, let me put it that way. So I'm kind of still thinking about this tall white situation, because there's more than one group. For instance, this Charles Hall, who was Air Force up around Indian Springs, and his interaction with what he called them tall whites. And they had an influence. And then you get back into the days of Philadelphia experiment and all, some of those things. Again, you're seeing the influence. So again, I'm kind of I kind of toss a coin with what they call the tall whites, because I really don't have a good, clear picture of what they're doing, what their influence is. Anyway, let's look at another article. I wanted to get into this other information. And I think I want to, let me just do this one here first. No, not this one. Darn it. be this one here. This was off, and you can go look on this website, www.reptilianagenda. I mean, this is stuff you just find on the internet. It's all over the place.
Yep.
You know, I'm not sponsoring it or saying yes or no on it, but there's information out there available if people want to look at it. Because again, they're going to get into something here that we're going to fix to talk about. Anyway, said the Brotherhood know that blood contains the life force energy. Drinking menstrual blood has always been a feature of the reptilian bloodlines because they need blood to live in this dimension. It was known as the Starfire. You know, this Starfire concept goes all the way back into Mesopotamia. I mean, this concept's been around for, you know, thousands of years. Anyway, the Starfire, which is called the female lunar essence, female menstrual cycle is governed by the cycles of the moon, and the blood contains that energy. Its ingredients are supposed to ensure a long life. Now, I have read an analysis of the various chemicals that are actually a part of the menstrual flow. It's not just blood. There are things actually that come all the way from the pineal gland and some of these other parts of the body in that particular blood flow. Anyway, it was said to be the nectar of the gods, and it was the reptilian gods who are genetic blood drinkers. And he talks about the Holy Grail chalice or cup. See, again, when you start talking about the Holy Grail chalice, you're talking about two different scenarios. The light side, when we talk about the Holy Grail, and then the dark side, because they imitate exactly what goes on the light side. Anyway, the Holy Grail chalice or cup is also symbolic of the womb and drinking menstrual blood, as well as being a symbol of the reptilian royal bloodline itself. Now, I just wanted to bring that up, and then we'll go on to what this Ann Wilder was talking about. But we'll post all this so people can, you know, read the full article at their leisure. But then there's one individual that came on the scene. Apparently, you know, she got red pilled somehow or the other. And this lady right here.
Yeah, that's her.
Yeah, that's Ann Wilder. Now, the situation with Ann Wilder was reported on first off by David Icke. Of course, David's done a lot of exposure of the reptilian stuff. Anyway, and you can find this interview on the internet. You can go listen to her speak about these things on some of these interviews.
Right.
And again, you know, listen to it, you know, I mean, but go into your heart to see whether or not you can actually believe what this lady's saying.
Right.
I mean, I've listened to her and I believe her because it fits in with everything else.
Right.
Anyway, the videotape interview titled Revelations of a Mother Goddess. At this point, Icke himself admits he has never actually met a reptilian, but during the 1990s, people began to approach him with stories of reptilian encounters. According to Icke, one woman even watched her boyfriend morph into a reptilian. However, not one authentic photograph or video recording of a reptilian has appeared in the 20 years since Icke first made his claim. Well, that's not true because it's on the internet. We've seen it.
Yeah, they're all over.
Videotapes of it. So this article here is kind of old. He has, however, discussed them at great length in every book he has written since 1999. His first book, The Biggest Secret. Now, at the time Icke conducted his videotaped interview with Arizona Wilder, and her birth name was Jennifer Ann Nagel. Now, she was a middle-aged American woman who claimed to have been a high priestess of the satanic type cult for much of her life. Wilder explained how she was raised from childhood to become a priestess and was mind programmed by Dr. Joseph Mengele. We know that name.
We do.
Yeah, he's that come out of the Nazi occult.
Mm-hmm.
They
Project
didn't bring
Paper.
they didn't bring you know, I think some of the reports here say that he was part of Project Paperclip, but he wasn't.
Oh no.
No, they wasn't nobody going to let Mengele into this country. They wanted the scientists. They didn't want people like Mengele. So I think first he went into South America and then made his way up surreptitiously into the United States. Now, I think in some of our other reports, way back last summer, I think we had talked about multiple personality situation.
Right.
And many of these victims of some of this had reported a Dr. Green. Now, this first report that came out, it's called the Green Bomb Report. Green tree.
Uh-huh.
Green bomb is a German word that literally means green tree. And we had talked about one of the major mortgage problems was a banking or financial institution known as Green Tree,
Mm-hmm.
Green Bomb.
Mm.
And I'm going to suggest that that organizations like that, banking institutions like that, and so forth, are actually providing the funds for a lot of this garbage that's going on. Anyway, Mengele has always been a problem. Wilder told Mike she was prenatally selected to become a priestess. Now, she does recognize her birth mother, but she says that the man who raised her was not her biological father. And she also reports that both her mother and her alleged father were both multiple personalities, both of them. Can you imagine being raised in a household like that?
Nope.
And she goes, she claims not knowing who her real father was, only knew he couldn't be the man who called himself her father because he came from an impure bloodline. We're back into the bloodline thing again, as you talked about. So Wilder did not divulge her precise heritage, but she identifies herself as Aryan. Okay, she identifies herself as Aryan, but it's the false Aryan. I'm telling you, for everything you find, it's always going to be a light side and a dark side every time. And they do that simply to destroy the possibilities on the light. So, people, you really, every time you see any kind of subject like this, like you see the word Aryan, there's a light side to that, and there's a dark side to it. And the dark side always imports or mimics the light side to draw people away from the light. Remember that. Let's see. Wilder did not divulge her precise heritage, but she identifies herself as Aryan and says she dyes her fair hair to keep the Illuminati away from her. Paradoxically, she also hints that her maternal ancestry involves the Rothschild family. Anyway, says Wilder had a seemingly normal upbringing in California, raised by her birth mother and a man she identified as her stepfather. Both her parents were elementary school teachers with access to what? Children.
Right.
Her memories of satanic reptilians were recovered during adult psychotherapy. In 1989, she realized her past contained large amounts of missing time. That would certainly indicate that she's multiple personality. Gradually, over the course of a decade, from 89 to 99, she recovered memories of sexual abuse by her stepfather, mind control programming, and ritual abuse. She realized that her parents had been forced to move to California in her infancy so she could begin training as a high priestess in the Illuminati, which practices Satanism. Anyway, You can read her full history and so forth. The Wilder's primary programmer was Joseph Mengele, also known as the Angel of Death, or Dr. Green, whom she claims was brought into the States under Project Paperclip to conduct horrific psychological experiments on children. Mengele made little effort to disguise his physical appearance or his strong German accent, but called himself Dr. Green. Dr. Green introduced Wilder to Satanism, taking her to rituals in the U.S., France, and Britain. Her parents did not interfere as being dissociative identity disorder victims themselves. And then she was schooled in all kinds of different things. She talks about going to 51 to meet cloned cyborg dolphin alien hybrids known as snipers, as well as real aliens. At another military base, she learned how to communicate with dolphins. The Janus group then taught her how to physically murder. When she was 5 years old, she was taken to Leningrad for psychic experiments jointly conducted. So she's been all over the world. They really trained her and everything you can imagine. Now, getting into the reptilians, said the reptilians follow the Aryans. Okay, let's see. Let me get here. Okay, the subjects subjected young Wilder to near drowning experience in ice water on 3 separate occasions to induce near-death experiences, just like waterboarding. As part of their research, the Mother of Darkness taught her that the Aryans, the Mother of Darkness taught her that the Aryans came to Earth from Mars about 6,000 years ago, after reptilian aliens invaded Mars. She then fails to explain whom the Mother of Darkness are, or if this is in fact another term for the Mother Goddesses. See, everything on the dark side is simply a counterfeit. Because when we on the light side talk about the divine feminine, on the dark side they have these other things going on, which are simply counterfeits. And so when you see them talk about Aryans, they're talking about counterfeits. Anyway, it says from Mars, and again, if you go listen to Randy Kramer's talks about his experience on Mars, who is he fighting with up there all the time? Reptilians. I've heard him on the internet and stuff, but he, sitting right here in my front room, he tell me stories and make your hair curl. Some of those stories he don't tell online. Anyway, he said the reptilians followed the Aryans 2,000 years later, masquerading as gods to fool humans into obeying them by interbreeding with select Aryans. The reptilians created an elite bloodline that persists to this day. Though they appear human, they are actually holographic projections surrounded by 7 to 12 foot tall bipedal lizards that can move in and out of other dimensions at will. Yeah, they mostly reside in the lower 4th dimension. Okay? Again, go back and listen to this Peggy on her interviews. She talks all about that. Anyway, these alien-human hybrids maintain their human shape most of the time, but when exposed to human blood, they lose control over their holographic projections, morphing into their reptilian manifestations. Wilder and Icke referred to this as shape-shifting. According to Wilder, the reptilians do not possess many human emotions, but they do have an urge to worship Satan. Furthermore, they need humans to conduct their satanic rituals because they do not possess psychic abilities. Apparently, psychic skills are required to worship the devil in the appropriate manner. This is where Wilder and her fellow mothers of darkness come in. So they're using them as a as a radio receiver or transmitter. And he uses the word Satan. I don't like that word. I would just say darkness, evil.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it talks about some of the different things. Like I said, I don't want to dwell on this too much. We have other things to talk about. Wilder escaped this fate only because she began to recover her repressed memories in her 40s. Now, this is fairly common. People who have been subjected to mind control and some of the technologies and programming, when they get into their 40s, the blank slating, or the mind wipe, as they call it, starts to wear off. And so this happened to her, apparently. Anyway, in her 40s, and yet strangely does not mention her own mother within this context. The alternate title for Mother Goddess is Starfire. Again, they're stealing a word. The dark side steals words and concepts and perverts them. Anyway, Starfire, which is a reference to menstrual blood, then talks about some of the things in his book, and then it goes through a whole discussion of this concept of starfire, menstrual blood, and all these kind of things. Wilder, in her interview with Ike, mentions numerous famous people as reptilian hybrids. Strangely, Wilder also implicated the ancient alien author Zecharia Sitchin. So she apparently had some information about Sitchin and felt like he was a reptilian hybrid. Whether that's true or not, I can't say. I don't know. Anyway, then it talks about some of these other things about the Pendar, and then she goes into this because anyway, royalty in England and Queen and all that stuff. Anyway, you can, like I say, we'll post this, and if people want to, have a look at it, it's a pretty big red pill to swallow. Let me put it that way. Now, that was a report. I want to get down to this.
So the spell on humanity, let's hope the spell is over with, and that the frequencies of the planet, the Schumann frequencies,
we're going to talk about that at the end.
All right, good. Okay.
Now, this article right here is actually Ann Wilder. She wrote this article. I mean, it's not Dave Ike, reporting on it.
Okay.
She's the one. Arizona Wilder, and they call her, conducted human sacrifice rituals for the Illuminati elite for decades. Those included the British royal family, George Bush, Henry Kissinger, and the stream of world-famous names revealed in the big secret. And there's the reference. You can go look at all that. Since she has escaped, she's dedicated herself to exposing it. Said I received this letter from her dated May 25th, 1999, in which she details the key points of the Illuminati ritual program running up to the millennium. And again, I don't know that we want to go through all of this. Let's see.
Made reference there to reading The Biggest Secret, which was a book published regarding regarding some revelations from Princess Diana and so forth. So might want to get that book.
Yeah, I was just listening to some of that the other day, and the
frequency of life she was talking about in the book, and
says, but they're, let's see, get this here just a little bit. It says, but their ritual is not just for ceremonial purpose or gratuitous horror. The rituals are designed to rewire the energy fields and grids of the planet, and therefore to fundamentally affect human consciousness. The rituals these bloodlines performed in the ancient world are the same as they do now. see the biggest secret for the background. They have a detailed annual calendar of events on which they perform their sacrifice rituals in line with key lunar, solar, and planetary cycles to harness that energy for the sick agenda to take complete control of planet Earth in the very near future. Well, that's what they thought they were going to do.
Right.
Guess what?
Yep.
It didn't work.
Right.
That's what some of us have come onto the planet to prevent. They talk about some of the rituals. So for some of them, they did the Great Pyramid in '99. They talk about, the relationship of, some of the mythology and how they've, again, fabricated fraud on the concepts, of our mythological history. And so you can see how, I read a lot of articles and different things on the internet. And I keep saying, well, why have they perverted some of our ancient history? And they perverted it so they can run their program on people. And that's why, I encourage people, when you're investigating or when you're doing research on any particular subject, read as many different authors as you can. Because to be perfectly honest, a lot of them are simply mixed up. And that is, they can't tell the difference between a true history and one that has become perverted. And I've known some black magicians, and boy, do they ever pervert history. It's a real problem. So again, when you do research, read and study, get as many different points of view as you possibly can, and then go into your heart and determine what it is that you will accept as being truthful. Just don't, for crying out loud, I've told people a million times, don't just listen to Winston on anything. Go and look at the information put out by everybody to see what it is that fits in, to your way of looking at things. And so the same thing right here. Would I believe Arizona or Ann Wilder exclusively? Oh, hell no.
Right.
Absolutely not. Is some of the information that she is willing to expose accurate? I would say yes, on the basis that I have read, studied, and listened to a whole variety of people who are very much like her. And so again, don't take it from just one source. If you do, you're going to include in your logic train falsehood. Go and study it out from as many different ones as you can possibly find. Because, like I say, if you don't, you're going to be fooled. Let me put it that way. Anyway, let's see what else we got here. Talking about this celebration at the Great Pyramid, George Bush. They talk about the all-seeing eye symbol, a lot of stuff. A lot of our people understand a lot of this stuff. And they talked about what happened the next day. Talked about some of the royal marriages and all these kind of things. Now, I had been informed by someone who seemed to think he knew that when Princess Diane was killed, that she was actually pregnant. And I said, whose was it? Was it Dodie? He said, no. He said she was actually pregnant again from Prince Charles. I'm scratching my head trying to think, what does all that mean? And I don't know. But it's obvious her children were not all of the same father.
Right.
that one redheaded kid. What's his name?
Harry.
He don't look nothing like Charles.
Nope, it's not.
First one does, but that second one, that redheaded kid, he don't look nothing like him. But anyway, this one source said that when she actually was killed, she was actually pregnant with another child from Charles. What that was all about. I mean, I can't find any correlation in my mind to see, what the correlation of all that is. But
maybe
really, I don't care.
I don't think she would
anyway,
voluntarily have done that. Might have been unknowingly.
Yeah. Anyway, go into House of Windsor, and all this Janus group, and all this crap. The marriage of Princess Diana to Charles was timed and located in the same way as part of the Windsor Illuminati ritual. St. Paul's Cathedral, where the marriage took place, is built on an ancient site of Goddess Diana. Worship of Ludgate Hill in the heart of the city of London, the Illuminati's epicenter of operational level. Diana also died in Paris on an ancient site of ritual sacrifice to the Goddess Diana, now known as the Pont de Alma Tunnel. Yeah. Anyway, this is for those who remember some of those events. This hadn't been that long ago. I think a lot of people would be familiar with some of that. And so this article here gives a lot of the details of what some of that stuff actually means. Let's see if there's anything else here in this article. No, that's pretty much it.
Well, this is really, interesting because it's uncomfortable. These are uncomfortable truths, and we're going to have to face them, because if we're going to move on and evolve as a species, we have to face this. So we don't let it happen again, which is always the lesson you bring to most of these historical type, reports, is that we need to know that history so we don't repeat it.
Yeah, in our recent years, this reptilian problem has been being dealt with. For instance, you can find it on the internet. Actually, I think you look on maybe Cobra's website. Anyway, the Pleiadians came in and quarantined Earth. Nobody in, nobody out. And then they went to work physically destroying the reptilians. I mean, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 summers ago, I was getting ready to go up to Gilliland up there. I think it was on a Saturday morning, so I was, kind of getting cleaned up, shaving. Not that you need to shave to go up to Gilliland Ranch, but I was. Anyway, I kept hearing these booms, and I thought it was an earthquake first. Then I realized it wasn't. The booms were happening up in the sky. So I asked James about it. He said, yeah. He says, those were Pleiadians destroying reptilian ships. And then I asked, Rob Potter about it. He said, yeah, because he knew about that too. He'd heard some of that, going on up in the sky. So they were physically attacking reptilian ships. Now, like I say, James Gilliland actually has a video. I don't know if it's on your website or not, but he said he had a video of some Pleiadian ships chasing a reptilian ship and attacking it with lasers and turning it into space dust.
Ooh, that's how to do it.
Videos of it.
That's how to do it.
So this war has been going on, and then they were trying to open up some wormholes and portals using CERN. And I think for people that would like to hear more about that, if you go and listen to some of the interviews that Sergeant Dan McBowen has put out on the internet, you'll learn a great deal about that.
We've done some GoldFish reports with him, and he did talk about this, in detail.
Exactly.
With a few other people we interviewed.
So they were trying to figure out some way to get off.
Our archives yet. We'll get the archives up. We'll get that. That's an older book.
Now, just for shits and giggles, in conversation with the Golden Dragon, and I won't say his anglicized name, in conversation with him, he had told me a few years back that the Queen Elizabeth, who's reptilian, had made a deal to get off the planet. And the deal was that she would sign over to the Golden Dragon all of her accounts in the Bank of England. And then they would let her leave the planet. And then the first time they made that deal, she backed out. Psychopath, reptilian, typical. Mm-hmm. And then went back in and made the same deal twice. And neither time. And see, this is what's happened with a lot of what's going on. I mean, why is it taking so long to get all this? And that is they keep, maybe it's some kind of rule or something like that they got to give these entities a chance. And so what happens is we have a deal is struck. For instance, the Rothschilds or the Queen of England or whoever will make a deal, that they're going to do something by a certain time, and then they don't. So now they got to go back and renegotiate it, and like I say,
a chance, not 10 chances, but a chance means one. And after that, the rules shouldn't apply. I don't know. That's,
I believe that. Yeah. I mean, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
Right.
And so, like I say, I mean, I don't know what kind of rules that you're going by, to give them all these opportunities, but it hasn't worked. It doesn't work with psychopaths. Mm-hmm. As I mentioned, a psychopath, completely narcissistic. Mm-hmm. That's just a personality that exists in the universe. And apparently the reptilians, because of their genetic physical makeup, are complete narcissistic psychopaths. What is the only thing they understand? Death. That's the end of it. So like I say, one time I was in Gilliland, he always laughs about this. I've heard him say it a couple of times on different reports. We were talking one day, and James was trying to figure out the craziness that goes on with all this. And I said, well, apparently you haven't dealt with very many psychopaths, have you? And then he kind of laughed about it and said, no, he hadn't, or at least didn't realize he had. Mm. But you can't deal with a narcissistic psychopath. You can't. It's a waste of time. Right. The only thing they respond to is pain. Only thing. You can't reason with them. You can't logic. You can't get to their conscience. They don't have a conscience. And these reptilians are total psychopaths. That's just their personality. All right. Well, let's, do you have any questions or comments about any of this information about Arizona Wilder and Wilder, whatever they call her?
Well, I think, our viewers can easily Google that, or go on YouTube and pull up some of her videos and interviews so they can get more detailed information. But these articles, we're going to include them for the viewers? Yeah, okay. So we'll have them as links, so you can look at them in more detail. And of course, it references other works of written documentation or testimony in her case. So there's other, books that you should read too. So Winston, it was great advice to suggest don't just, read one book on the subject, read many books on the subject, and you'll find that common theme. You'll find, but there's always that, as you see with the Trump campaign, let's just look at how the dark, look what they did. They're the ones who were working with the Russians, sold uranium to the Russians, did all of this, takes their foundation and it's just a slush fund account. So they're distorting the light. They're distorting, and yet they're like you said, they're psychopaths. It's almost as if they have no sense of accountability for their lies and their like you said, perversion of truth. Because what's happened is, this is why I keep referring to Donald Trump as Teflon Don in some of the POTUS reports I do, because he is like Teflon Don. He has had an impeccable, not perfect, but pretty impeccable in terms of, ethics and morality. he's been, a very a man of integrity, and so that's why people are doing business with him around the world. And those who don't are part of this satanic cabal, and that is how you know. So what they do is they're mind controlling these masses, and they're trying to really lead the sheep mentally to oppose Donald Trump. There you see, Rosie O'Donnell out there. I mean, she's part of the Hollywood pedophile elite who don't not say I'm calling her a pedophile. I'm saying that she's part of the Hollywood pedophile group, because that's who Hollywood is. They're infested with Satanist pedophiles. So, and all this child trafficking. So she's got an obligation, if she doesn't want her career ruined, to go out and oppose Trump. And that's what they're all doing. They're all puppets to save their own butts. And they're doing it, they're really doing this at your expense. They don't care if you're harmed by it, as long as they save their career. Because I can't imagine why else they'd be doing it, Winston.
Yeah.
Right? So people learn the discernment about that. It's what I want to focus on.
Let me suggest and imply, not by way of first-hand knowledge, but let me suggest that Donald Trump is supported by and involved with the Orion Council of Light. That's the spiritual group of the Galactic Federation. Now, I'm going to suggest that. I'm not going to say it. I'm just going to suggest that might be the case. As was mentioned, when Trump was flying from New York down to Washington, D.C. for the inauguration, we had it. We had it on the internet. His plane was being escorted.
Yeah.
By UFOs.
We featured that on the GoldFish report.
Yeah, to guarantee that nothing would happen to him that he got there. Yes?
I think that was our first POTUS report. It was my first POTUS report.
Wow.
That's when I started the POTUS reports. We're on week 74 now, I think. And so it was I think the first one, because he won the presidency. So it was leading up. So it was the inauguration. And I think that might have actually been our first POTUS report. And we have every week presented a POTUS report, not missed one, for our viewers. So we hope appreciate that.
And then this last report we had when he left Singapore,
right.
Apparently there was a missile shot at Air Force One.
Mm-hmm.
They're wasting the only thing that happens when they do that, they're exposing them so that the Air Alliance will know where they're at and go destroy them.
Yeah.
The people are stupid.
That's what QAnon says all the time. These people are stupid because they're so desperate right now. They'll go down. They're I guess, like I said in the beginning of the program, that they will, take as many with them as they can, and that's it's just time to get rid of them.
Yeah, like I say, when you're dealing with psychopaths, you just have to deal with them on that level. There's no way around it.
Oh, my Q.
There we go.
My Q balloon is reflecting the light. Oh, look at that. So it gives me a nice golden glow. I'll keep it right in front of me.
Okay, now let's go to the lighter side.
Good.
Let's talk about now we have talked about this quite a bit, and I have another article where I got it from. I just go to my computer looking at stuff. I come up with all these things I've saved over the years. Mm-hmm. So this next article, let me bring it up so we can discuss. Before you move into that, let's just not forget the images of President Eisenhower meeting with the I don't know if it was Zeta or it was the Greys, I'm not sure, but there are images of him with these extraterrestrials. Yeah. And making deals. And he wasn't the first. Truman was before him making deals. And I guess because he got burnt on a deal with them, he didn't trust the good guys who finally later came, like Valiant Thor. Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of information that was available. Actually, FDR, before Truman, was visited by these tall whites, or whatever you want to call them. So this is nothing new. I mean, if you go all the way through history, if you get all the way back to George Washington and Valley Forge, we have the famous story of him praying and being attended to by angels, they call them. Who are they? See, in that day and age, they ascribed it to biblical concepts. So they said that George Washington was visited by angels. Okay, where'd the angels come from? Who were they? What was their purpose of advising him? And again, so we have all of these things all through history. Now we got into this last deal. Certainly, prior to the Philadelphia experience, when the idiots, ripped, holes and tears in the time-space continuum that allowed some of this crap to drop through, FDR was in fact visited. This is before all these other things. Then Truman come on the scene, Eisenhower come on the scene, and so Eisenhower was visited, and they said, "Look, we'll give you technology if you'll simply knock off all this nuclear stuff." At that time, there were only two countries that had that capability:
right.
United States and, to some extent, Russians. And so the Russians were given the same deal, and they rejected it too. And then, after Eisenhower rejected the first offer, they warned him that you're gonna get visited by some other people you ain't gonna like. And that's what happened. These little grays or whatever they call them, come in and made that deal, and they're the ones that was running Dulce. For those of you,
what a house of horrors that place was.
I wish you had them right here, but you can go on the internet and get copies of Sean David Morton, who's, by the way, a political prisoner at this point. Anyway, if you go read his books called Sands of Time, he had 3 volumes. And I think in the first volume, they have the attacks that they had to make on Dulce. And these are real things. And so when Eisenhower didn't take the first offer, he took the second offer from the bad guys. That's when they started setting up Dulce, and they simply started kidnapping people and turning them into soup. Go back to Jupiter Ascending. And those little vials they had,
right.
What was in that?
That was the adrenochrome.
From humans.
Loosh.
Well, no, it loosh. No, but it was the essence of humans that the reptilians needed. I mean, go watch that movie and watch it from the point of view that we're talking about. It's all in there. I mean, there's a lot of romanticism in there, girl meets boy and flying around with flying shoes and all kinds of different things. That's okay. It's a movie. But so much of the stuff in there is so real. And that's what was happening at Dulce with these Greys, who were in some respects working with this tall white Nordic called Lord Tugi. And they were simply harvesting humans as a stockpile for the invasion that they expected to happen on the 2012 alignment. Now, all that got stopped. And you can read the book about how it was stopped. Is that fictional book accurate? I would say probably it is. Probably. And, if we had the chance to interview Sean and ask him, how much of that's actually fictionalized, he would probably say it's not fiction at all. Probably not. And other things I've read and studied over the years indicate that it's not fiction. He had to write in fiction form to get it published. And that's the reason why the government attacked him and threw him in prison. They were trying to get the original documents from him, which he refused to give up. So now they threw him in prison. This is their tactic.
Right.
So when this new interim government and the military takes over and stuff, then I would expect that Sean will be released. I would expect that.
I think he's been doing some reports with JP on Wolf Spirit Radio, if I'm not mistaken.
From prison?
Yeah, from prison. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. No, I hadn't seen that. I'll have to go look at that. But that's what they do. That's what they do.
think
I
it's
mean, other friends of mine, have been, they're not convicted of any crime. They're simply political prisoners.
right.
This goes on all the time. Now we're finally getting away from some of this, the disillusion of the IRS and all that crap. But anyway, let's get into some of the brighter things.
Sure.
Talk about some, give people a little bit of hope about what we expect. So let's look at this other article here. Again, it's this is something I collected off the internet, some years ago. Just going through my computer, looking at let's see. Must be up here. Yeah, here it is. Now, this article supposedly came from this individual that calls himself Archangel Michael. There's been a lot of stuff on the internet under his title, and so I mean it's quite well known. Now, whether this is an archangel or not, look at the information, read all the different things, make your own mind up. But the reason I bring this particular article up is because of the information that was put out at this time. Because all the things that we're experiencing, all the things we're talking about now, was talked about a number of years ago. For instance, we had opportunity to talk to this Allison Coe, who does hypnotic regressions, and she was reporting on a lot of energy waves. I've talked to James Gilliland about all the energy that's been constantly flooding into the planet from various sources. And then I think you felt it too, when finally the announcement that Trump and this Korean, what's his name?
Kim Jong-un?
Yeah. When they finally signed that treaty and made it public, did you not feel a change?
It went
on the planet?
It was a ripple that went across. It was a ripple of peace that went
Yes, it was.
across, a wave that went across this planet. Absolutely. And we talked
Absolutely
about it
did.
on our report on Tuesday with
Yeah,
Scott.
I heard you.
Very profound.
Yeah. Anyway, let's just go to some of the points in this particular article that, kind of bring us up, because it's talking about actually the movement of our planet, our whole solar system. We got this 25,000 year precession. It's a cyclic thing, and in the course of the cycle we take, we go through high energy areas twice. And right now, our planet, is in this high energy zone right now. That's why we have these energies bombarding the planet, this high energy zone that we're in. Now, this is not speculation. Crying out loud, this is astronomy, this is physics. So we're not making this stuff up. Anyway, it says this super wave of gamma photon light has the power of 100 million nuclear reactors and had to be diffused using advanced satellite technology by a group of star beings known as the Earth Alliance to turn down the power level to be safer and easier to integrate by the Earth and its beings. Now, if you go look on all the reports, especially on this one website called Operation Disclosure, all of these things that are happening with destroying the cabal, the submarines, and all these secret underground bases and stuff is done by who? Who do they say is doing it?
The Alliance.
Earth Alliance.
Yeah.
With the assistance of some of the different ones who had come out of the secret space program. Anyway, so apparently we're into this huge energy zone, and if it were not turned down, it would possibly destroy much of humanity. So anyway, it says some of the after effects of this streaming down of wave X has seen in every country of the world as large blue-white column beams of plasma measuring up to 1 mile in diameter striking the ground.
Seen it. I've seen it. Yeah, lots of it. It was all over the internet a couple of years ago. Yeah.
Says as we now enter the densest area of the photon belt, the power of wave X is increasing each hour and each day. Now, like I mentioned, when we had this wave of peace, when that agreement was made between Trump and I can't say his name.
Kim Jong-un, yeah.
Yeah, Kim.
Yeah.
Kim's his last name. Yeah, between Trump and Kim, what that did, it opened up and allowed for some of this energy to spread across the planet. That was ever so significant. Ever so significant. And then he gets talking about the what he calls the event horizon that happened September the 28th, 2015, is when the superwave peaks and is the highest energetic frequency ever measured in the cosmos of modern history. The Schumann resonance of the Earth, again, this Schumann was a German who discovered how to measure the Earth's frequency, what it was vibrating at. Okay, so the Schumann resonance of the Earth and the entire cosmos has reached an astounding level of 33 hertz. Now, with no other explanation for the sudden leap other than you are pushing it higher and higher at an exponential rate by your internal vibration and divine intention. This is 12 hertz above the 5D new Earth. So a fifth dimensional planet would be vibrating at, according to this author, 21 hertz. 20 or 21 hertz. But what he's saying here is because of the intention of the light workers, that the Schumann resonance, when this article was written, was up to 33 hertz. And you reported on it.
Right.
That sometimes we even have spikes of up to 200. Luckily, they're only spikes, because if it went up to 200, I don't know how many of us could actually physically exist here.
Well, I can tell you there were some group meditations that were organized by Cobra. Who there was one that reached, and it reached it even before the time it was supposed to actually begin. It reached critical mass. And so that had some kind of an impact, and as long as, and the intentions, of course, are what matters in that, and the intentions were to bring peace. You see, the intention on that, I think, might have been, it might have been Congo, or it might have been Syria, something like that. I don't recall which one it was for, but it there was this way to measure it too, how to measure the group effect, the energetic effect of these mass meditations. I don't know how to do that, but
and just let me, I've been reluctant to reveal some of these other things we've done, but let me report on one thing that we did. Myself and 3 other individuals, with the implementation of female energy into it, was that we actually constructed a wormhole. And we put it, yes, I will tell them.
No, do you want to take the screenshot off so they can see you when you're describing this?
Okay, I can come back to it.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks.
Yeah, we have some very talented individuals on this planet. Not myself. I participated in it. But what was created was a singularity, and a wormhole was created. And we took and this wormhole was 44 feet in diameter. And we took this wormhole and we inserted it into the Pentagon. And then myself as the intentioner, because there has to be an intention for what happens that would cause some movement. And so the intention that I read into it was out of Isaiah. And that is, if you look in Isaiah, it talks about the time when we would beat our swords into plowshares and our spears into pruning hooks, the purpose of which was to bring peace to the planet. So the intention of creating that wormhole was to suck or to draw out of the Pentagon bloodlust, or the desire for war and killing. And by inserting Isaiah into that operation, we had intended to turn the Pentagon into a peacekeeping organization and not a bloodthirsty bunch of warriors. Okay? So that wormhole is still in operation. It's still drawing negativity, and it will not stop until the words of Isaiah are fulfilled. Now that's what we did. So, like I say, we're working on a lot of us on the planet are working in areas that most people would not be familiar with, but we are doing those things. So we have a good intent, and we see some of these operations, being fulfilled. At least in it's still in operation. Let me put it that way. Do you have any comments on that?
Nope.
Okay.
I'm good.
Let's go back to the screen share.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't generally tell too many secrets, but I felt like we needed to tell that one.
Okay. Very good.
I didn't give anybody's name except for my own, so if anybody's got anything to say about it, they can say it about me. But I won't reveal the others who participated with it. Okay. Let's look at this. These ascension pioneers will deserve the first entrance into the kingdom of 5D heaven because of their sacrifice and their desire and dedication to this whole ascension project. Most of you reading this message will be included in this first wave of approximately 2.3 billion souls.
Whoa.
First wave into 5D, according to this author, they're apparently in contact with this Archangel Michael. So the information that they're reporting here apparently is information they got from this Archangel Michael. Anyway, the first wave that could possibly enter into this transition into a fifth dimensional entity, apparently 2.3 billion souls. Okay, that's a pretty good bunch. Says there is a leveling off and adjustment period for a few months, and they're given the date of September the 28th, 2015. As being a significant date, and I'm not really sure. But again, when we start talking about linear time, and I object to translating these concepts into linear time.
Okay.
It doesn't work that way. Anyway, so after a few months leveling off, and the 2.3 million, they have a chance to kind of level out a little bit. Then we're talking about the change on the planet. It says the ones who did not vibrate high enough to reach 21 hertz will come a few months after in the spring of 2016. And then it says the ones who did not reach the first level first are no less important, and everyone makes it. Now, I'm going to say no, that's not true. Everyone doesn't make it. We're not taking these assholes with us.
Right.
I don't expect to see the Queen of England in the fifth dimension.
Mm-hmm.
No, not everybody makes it.
Not part of the deal.
Yeah, I don't like generalizations. like when we on the last report we did with Scott, Scott was, using these same kind of generalizations, which I objected to. I said, no, there's some souls who came on the planet under contract specifically for a third dimensional experience as a part of their soul progression. No, everybody's not going, because that would be forcing them out of their contracts. If they have a contract with Creator for that experience as a part of their soul development, then they will be given that opportunity. Now, will they remain on this planet? Probably not. Probably not. I mean, there's been several indications. Even Alison Coe in some of her conversations, with some of these hypnotic, she's talking to these higher souls or higher selves, and some of them seem to indicate that there's going to be another place. So that those who are not going into this new dimension at this time could still have the third dimensional experience on a different planet. And we've had several indications of this. So again, when we start generalizing, say, well, everybody's going.
Nope.
That's not true. All right. So that's okay. I mean, I'm not, pointing fingers or trying to castigate somebody for using a generalization, but it's probably not the best way to describe things by using generalizations. It's just not. Anyway, let's go through, this article here. It has a lot of things that are in red. They start talking about the event horizon will start to hit mainstream news as we draw near. World leaders, governments, and agencies who are well aware of the incoming photon wave are going to start to do the right thing. Well, we just saw that, didn't we?
We did. And only the ones who, are not even capable of understanding that this shift is happening, whether they fight it or not, are the ones who are opposing the peace.
They're the ones that are going to get a red pill suppository.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can either take it the easy way or you can take it the hard way. It's up to you.
There you go.
Okay, I'm just joking about this now. I'm not trying to be gross. It's just funny. It strikes me.
It's just funny. It's just funny because one of my reports, I had, I think what the title was, Big Red Pill, Choke It Down, because it was like, people, we've just got to be getting this information into other folks who, really just, are difficult. It was around holiday time, because that's the time when it's difficult to have these conversations, is around those dinner tables.
Well, Louisa, we're creating a first with the red pill suppository. Maybe they'll make a new Matrix movie instead of swallowing the pill.
Oh man, that's not exactly what I want GoldFish Report to be coined for.
Maybe we better copyright that.
What'd you say?
Maybe we better copyright the red pill suppository.
Oh my God! Yeah.
Get the movie rights to it.
Yeah. Oh man, it's funny as heck though. I mean, because it's like when you just can't. You're right. If they're not gonna choke it down, they're gonna get it the other way because it's coming. It's gonna come. Can't stop it. And they're gonna have to, sadly, they're just gonna have to, bend real far to get it because it's easier. It's easier and more pleasant to swallow the pill than, to have it
the other way
inserted by someone else.
Oh, you got me laughing and coughing again, so I better stop it.
Okay. No, but this is interesting.
Yeah, remember, folks, you heard it first on GoldFish.
Oh, thanks, Winston. No, it was from Winston. You remember that? Actually, it was. That's why we were laughing. But this whole event thing, I mean, this has kind of gone on and on and on and on, and it's really taking a very long time. What about people who are saying, gee, I don't feel like I mean, they're obviously trying to prevent this from happening. There's people who, like I could say, when I first started doing GoldFish Report, it was 3 years ago. I mean, I looked a lot younger, and it was only 3 years. And I know that I've been under a lot of, I would say retaliation for what I do. And it has taken a toll on me. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
And so I think that, my frequencies were quite high when I first started the report, which was around 2015. So I would say this is pretty accurate. The question is that these electromagnetic, the stuff that's being reported in this paper here that I was telling you about, these things are all there to destroy our frequency and lower our vibration, lower our frequencies. And because they're psychopaths, like Winston said, and they're going to try to do that. So, it may temporarily, impact us and our health or whatever, but I think that our deeds, our actions speak louder. And I think that, we might get that extra help we might need if we
Yeah, we have gotten extra help. If that weren't the case, we'd all be dead now.
Yeah, we would be. I think so.
Or in prison or whatever.
Right. Yeah. I never talk about it, maybe little comments passing here or there, but if anyone really knew what was going on in my life, they'd be like, how on earth are you getting up and doing these reports all the time? And one day I may tell the story, but I really don't like to relive it. So it's really kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, we're getting, things are getting better. And okay, let's go a little bit further here. We're about out of time. Says there will be a major announcement about the world money system that has already been switched over behind the scenes, and great abundance is about to make its way to you personally soon. Yeah, this transition happened, a good while ago.
Right.
And everything's in place. And so, as far as, for instance, on this currency redemption, it, to my knowledge, it has started and stopped at least 4 times.
Yeah.
And so, just be patient, folks. It'll eventually get around to us. Let's see. Like I say, we're kind of running up on time here. We say ride this super photon wave with everything you've got. See this as the beginning of true freedom of humanity. Yeah, we're looking at the SARA, according to some of the reports, that the GESARA, which is planetary, has is online, just waiting for announcements.
Okay. Yeah. I think this event with Trump might have been part of that, perhaps. Yeah.
I think so. And it talks about, some of these concepts of twin flames. It says, know that many star races are now here for the final curtain call in this great cosmic story you have played an important role in. Great beings from many worlds are here on the edge of their seat to see how you are doing and to see what you will do next. They are applauding you. Now, let me report that's true. They are keeping track. And I'll give you a perfect example of it. Once when my wife and I were traveling, it's been about, 6 or 7 years ago, we were traveling, and she was driving. I was in the passenger seat, and she went into the hotel to make arrangements, for us to stay overnight. And when she came back out, she said there was a man on the driver's side of the vehicle, which would be far side from her, that was looking through the window at me. And when she went out to challenge, she went around the back of the car. By the time she got around the back of the car, this man was gone.
Whoa.
And I asked Gilliland about that, and he said, "Yeah." He said they were just checking on you to make sure everything was right. So yeah, they are keeping track of us in the things that we do, and so apparently somebody, some accountant somewhere from space or whatever was checking up to actually to see what I was doing. What was I about doing my business, and that's happened more than once. So yeah, they do keep track of us and what we do and so forth.
Yeah, I had someone visit me, but I couldn't tell you who it was. We'll talk about that another time.
Yeah. Anyway, he wants to spend a lot of time with this twin flame concept. Yeah, some of us do have twin flames. Once I asked Gillian, I said, can you locate and see where my twin flame is? And he did. He went and found her. He said she's over here in the 6th dimension doing something. And I said, oh, really? Well, tell her to get her. myself over here. I need some help. So yeah, the concept of twin flame. This is not what's everybody like to use the word. It's called. Oh, I forgot the word now. But
twin flame. You mean for twin flame?
Yeah, twin flame is different than a soul partner. What do they call them?
A soulmate?
Yeah, soulmate is not a twin flame.
Right. No, they're just from the same soul monad, the family of souls that come from. Right. But the twin flame is the male and female energy that supposedly gets split,
correct.
Come into duality consciousness on 3D planet Earth. And so, or either one decides to stay and one decides to go. So it could be a male counterpart incarnates, the female stays a soul or a being of another, dimension. Or they could both be incarnated on Earth, which is what they're talking about here. Isn't that what they're talking about here, though? Are they talking about just the Earth twin flames?
Yeah, that's what they're talking about here. So some of these twin flame entities are present. Mm-hmm. Like I say, I'm just here. My twin flame's off somewhere else doing something else. That's why I told Gilliland could find her, but he couldn't find her name or couldn't communicate with her. God said, hey, if you run into her, tell her to get on down here, man. I need help.
But you know what? I also read that twin flames recognize each other. They recognize each other's frequency.
If they're in the presence of each other.
If they're in the presence, right? If they're on this planet, something will happen. There'll be some kind of synchronicity that brings them together, and they'll recognize each other by their frequency. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they'll know it's a twin flame. It's just on the soul level, the soul recognizes the other soul. So
well, it's also something a little bit different. Like I say, I don't get.
I'm not an expert at it. I'm just telling you what research I've done.
I know a little bit about it, and so that's about all I want to say about it. But anyway, this article here talks about that concept. Mm-hmm. So there, like I say, this report from this Archangel Michael is bringing a lot of good points that people need to think about. Love God with all your heart, mind, and soul. And this is the secret to entering the kingdom of heaven. We ask, who is the identity of this great God? Now, I want to emphasize again that when Jesus was here, he differentiated between the kingdom of God and the kingdom of heaven.
Okay.
Now, because when you go into the baptism of Jesus by John the Baptist, that was a baptism into the kingdom of God. And then when he had ascended, then he was able to unite with the kingdom of heaven. Now, these are just the words we use, okay? So we're not talking about, physical places in the universe. Right. We're talking about a concept, a condition. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, there is a baptism into the kingdom of God, and yes, I do know about that. But there's also that unifying with the kingdom of heaven. So when heaven comes down, when the New Jerusalem comes down, the New Jerusalem comes out of heaven. The kingdom of God, Jerusalem, is the one over there. When where a temple will be built at Jerusalem, not Herod's temple. A new temple will be built there, which will be the kingdom of God temple, and then the kingdom of heaven temple will come down out of heaven. And I project, now this is my theory, that will happen when the earth has progressed not to a 5D, but into a 7th dimensional earth. That's what I project. That's my theory. You can take it for what it's worth. Okay. Anyway, let's see if there's anything here. It says, your world will now be set free forevermore. The level of suffering and chaos on this planet cannot be sustained even past another few months. Now, we had spent a long time on that allegory out of the Mentonal Archives about the difference between the everlasting covenant, where all this suffering and conflict existed, to where it was converted into the new and everlasting covenant, where those kind of conflicts, stop. So this allegory that we spent so much time on is being described here.
Right.
So it says your world will now be set free forever. The level of suffering and chaos on this planet cannot be sustained. Because that was a big gripe of the Holy Ghost. He said, look what you're doing. Stop that. Anyway, he says something has to give at once, and it truly already has, as billions of light beings continue to transmit this evolutionary wave of super consciousness to transform ourselves and the outward perception of this place into the paradise it was meant to be. Anyway, we'll put this article up for people to look at. Like I say, it's not the only article on this subject. There's been much said about it. So, like I say, we're running out of time. We can't, keep this up because, I mean, the reason we do a 2-hour report is because the information, in order to correlate the information we're trying to give here, you can't do it in an hour, So we tried to extend our conversations here for 2 hours, so that we can, make a full thought and so forth. So I hope people are not put off by how long some of these reports are, but we simply have to. It takes 2 hours to really put out a good concept on some of these things that we're talking about. So I apologize, if people are worried about having to listen to some of these things for a couple of hours, but that's just what we have to do.
Well, I mean, people can stop and, come back. They can get so far and come back.
Yeah,
and it's a kind of material that you have to do that with anyway, because you have to really kind of re-listen to it, kind of absorb it, and apply it to see how that will change the information you have or update the information that you have. And also, I want our viewers to know, if you're watching this, this is completely commercial free. We never monetized our channel. But that didn't mean that when YouTube deleted our channel, it didn't affect us monetarily, because it did. Because our subscribers have been part of GoldFish Report and have always been part of GoldFish Report. And I'd love to see all of our subscribers come back, because we miss you. And I miss interacting with you on the message boards. And we're really, I don't know where you all went, but please come back, because we miss you. And there's other channels that do copy our reports, which is fine, because this is about getting the information out. But they also monetize their channels, which means if you're watching this with commercial breaks, it means it's not an original. So, and so if you want to watch it without commercial breaks, only the original would do. So I just wanted to make that
maybe
clear.
We can start a good rumor here. I mean, I like rumors. Let's start a good rumor that the reason why your subscribers haven't come back is because they all ascended.
Oh, they all ascended. Aww.
There you go.
That's nice, Winston. That's a good rumor to start.
Hey, listen, rumors are great, man.
Because
I used to work on a job when I was working in construction stuff, and if there wasn't a major rumor started by 9 o'clock in the morning, we all had failed.
Oh my goodness.
we love rumors.
Well, that's what we're here for. So, I mean, we can't ascend until our job is done. And even, so we're still doing what we're supposed to be doing here. And we hope that it is helping people on their path to ascension and their path to enlightenment is really what I mean by that. And again, we want to remind our viewers, we're very grateful. I really love people who message me on Facebook on our news page, send me stories all the time, send us stories. Those people who can make a financial contribution, you're all the lifeblood of this GoldFish Report, because I just can't do it all by myself. And I have lots of wonderful people like Winston, like Jim Fetzer, like Steve, my other co-host Steve, who hasn't done a report in quite a while, but and all the guests who have been on GoldFish Report who have come on to talk about their story and share it with all of you and see how that may change your view of the world, and with critical thinking, of course. So we want to thank all of our viewers who have always been there along the way, and new ones who are just starting to red pill, because I'm sure you would prefer, swallowing rather than the insertion. So.
Yeah, but just remember, you heard it first on GoldFish Report. We're copyrighting that concept. Anybody wants to do a movie about that, you got to talk to us.
Oh, no. Okay, well, thanks for that, Winston.
Oh, you got to have a good laugh.
Yeah, it's one for the history books here on GoldFish Report. So you never know, folks. I might make, every report I do, I'm letting our viewers know. I always have pages and pages of notes that I take, and I might one day make this volume of reports, of notes, because not everything I write up. I have to write up each report in the description section, but not everything is taken from those notes, but a lot of interesting things are written down regarding each one of them. And I will publish the synopsis at some point that will be available. The synopsis of every report that we did will be available. They are copied. So thankfully, when YouTube did delete our channel, the writing was on the wall. I saw it in advance enough to know that I needed to prepare. I needed to protect our archive, and not just our video archive, our written archive, which includes the transcripts of some of the interviews that we've done with Cobra in particular, and also all the write-ups of all the reports, because those are the synopsis, and they tell you basically what the report's about. So I want to let our viewers know at some point that will be published, probably in a book or something, some kind of a booklet or something.
Well, I think that the Google and YouTube folks are in bad need of a red pill suppository.
I agree. I think YouTube time to bend over really far, buddy, because we got about a few million people who've got a giant big suppository to insert. Because you need a little wake-up call. So for everybody, Winston, you're going to start a movement. Stop already. You're going to start a red pill suppository movement.
It'll probably catch on pretty good.
Yeah, I bet it would, man. Let me tell you, we have to start that. All right, I'm going to start that meme on this report today. I'm going to publish that meme with this report today. We'll see how it goes. Okay. Thanks for inspiring that, Winston. Appreciate it. So, folks, thank you so much for viewing. We'll be back on Monday with another POTUS report. We will also be back next week with another Country Roads with Winston, and we may have some other interviews coming up as well. So it's been a scheduling issue, actually, with different schedules. So we'll try to get that all worked out. And Winston, did you have any other final comments? Or
no?
You've done enough. You said enough, Winston. Okay. Okay. We'll leave it at that. So I hope you enjoy it, folks, and stick around. We've got more to come. And
not like that.
No, hope you have a great weekend. And we'll see you next week. And I'll see you next week too, Winston. Thanks. Have a great weekend. And this concludes this edition of the GoldFish Report.